What skill sets are
Yeah.
you looking for? What
Uh,
qualities do I need to have?
yeah, that's a good question. So I often tell people to think less about the job duties themselves and more about the intangible kind of the skill sets that you want to market. And it
Mhm.
also be well researched in the cultural philosophy of the firm, which is easily researchable. You can Google Amex Blue Box values and it will bring up all of our cultural things. Make sure you interweave that language. So one, do your research.
Mhm.
Two, personalize your message and really upsell your skill sets. There are a couple of things that matter to Amex. I always say frameworks scale more than individual solutions.
Hello, everyone. I am Dani Wigfall, and this is the Design Your Remarkable Life podcast. Here, I interview incredible individuals who are leaving their mark on the world, generating wealth, and charting their own course. So get your notepads out and let's get into it. I absolutely love and adore our next guest. He is absolutely incredible, amazing, so intelligent, so generous, and he is sharing so much with us on this podcast, from how to show up as your authentic self and how that can really catapult your career. Also, when to know when to pivot and what that looks like and how that can lead you to just soaring. He's also sharing what the top financial institutions are looking for talent wise, how he got there, how he's worked at several different financial institutions, and I'm saying the top ones, and what that looked like for him. But then also he's sharing, giving us a little tea on where you can find a date. Yes, this is the Design Your Remarkable Life. So we don't just talk about work, but just things in life. You have a remarkable life, a very full life. And so he is giving us all of the goods in this episode. I am so happy to welcome Aaron Davis. Currently, right now, he is Vice President, Head of Platform Acquisition and Service Strategy. Before that, he was Executive Director and Head of Product at JP Morgan Chase and Senior Product Manager at Capital One. Without further ado, Aaron Davis. Aaron, welcome to the show. I am so happy to have you on the show.
I am too. I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy to be here supporting you. This is awesome.
Oh, no, this means so much. Okay, so where did this all start for you?
So I grew up in inner city Chicago, and as most people have stereotyped it to be, it's not that different, at least in my neighborhood. My parents had me young. At 16, I ultimately became the first person to go to college. But prior to jumping to that, there wasn't a lot of investment in my neighborhood in terms of identifying how do you do more than survive high school or to
Yeah.
survive every day. How do you dream beyond yourself and your circumstances? How do you even identify what you're good at doing? So I started to get shipped out of my neighborhood to some academic centers that were a little bit more challenging. And there I found myself surrounded by intellectual peers. I found the work to be a lot more challenging. I started to hear the word college become a regular vocabulary. It was an expectation for everyone.
Yeah.
And my parents started to grow up into that aspiration for me as well. As I adopted it, so did they. With as limited information as they had about how to get there and what it entailed, every piece of information that a counselor gave or someone else gave them, they went full throttle to try to make it happen. And whilst the posse program, which me and you are both a part of,
Yep.
I was a nationally ranked debater, and I had a bunch of different opportunities to go to college as a result of that. But the posse program was something a counselor signed me up for. I went there with low expectations. I was not really sure what this thing was. And as I started to see, there was a lot of people that looked like me that all were super excited for the possibility of going to college, especially somewhere different than their neighborhoods. I got excited too. I ultimately chose Pomona, and I still to this day say Pomona is the thing that unlocked every opportunity for me. It just absolutely changed the way I thought about the world. It asked me deeper questions, and from Pomona, I started to broaden my my ideas of what I could be. I think for me, even with all of the ways that my parents invested in me to go to college now that they've learned from counselors, they still had a limited interpretation of what success in college looked like. It was like lawyer or doctor. Black people get two options. It's like, go save a life
Yep.
or stop somebody from going to jail. Like, those are the two options that you ultimately get. I succeeded into one of those. I ultimately like applied to law school, and once I got to law school, even on the scholarship, I realized that that just wasn't for me. While I was really good
Yeah.
at writing and arguing, the system and how I felt it was anti-black, like on its face, just
Hmm.
really made me feel like that wasn't something that I could be transformative in. But what was I
Hmm.
good at? To my earlier intro, again, to anchor back on what I was saying, thanks to a series of folks who encouraged me to look broader than a profession, or
Hmm.
maybe an end goal. I started to think about what skills am I really good at. I
Yeah.
knew that I knew that I was persuasive. I knew that I was data driven, and I love to do research and perform analysis. Um, I knew that I was a strategist. Like, I think outside the box, empowered by liberal arts education. I was encouraged to do that. These are my skill sets. So, like, I
Yeah.
started to map back those skill sets to what kind of career occupations would allow me to make the best use of the things that I'm really good at if lawyering is not that thing. And I
Hmm.
ultimately decided that business would be that. Um, and it's different because, like I said, law can be anti-black. Businesses can be both pro-black and anti-black. It depends on the philosophy of the
Hmm.
corporation. So there's more possibility in the way that I saw the transformative potential of the business. And there's a different set of questions where the conclusions can all be different. What I saw in the law was that there was a cyclical recurring theme that was the formidable conclusion for black bodies, and I saw so much possibility in business. I ultimately went back to business school, did business school and MSW at the same time, and I
Hmm.
ultimately landed on banking and product, which was my final manifestation of the thing that I felt I was really good at. I could solve problems, strategize, influence, build things that people can actually touch and feel, but I would be responsible for optimizing them over time. It wasn't something I would set and forget, something that I owned. And I deeply wanted a sense of ownership. I wanted a strategy that I could lean back to, and I wanted to make the best use of my skills. So that is a long way
Hmm.
of getting to the roundabouts that got me to where I am today.
No, that's good. That's good. And I love that you had that reflection of like, what are my skills? What am I good at here? One thing that was very interesting that you said to me, of the many, but one of the things is a corporation can be anti Black or pro Black, right?
Yeah, yeah.
What does that look like if on both sides of the spectrum?
Yeah. So a corporation being anti-black, its consumer and constituents don't look like the people who are working in its offices, which means that on face it could not necessarily philosophically relate to the things that its consumer base are going through. It is not investing in the communities that are its consumer base. So it's
Hmm.
one thing to think of what your consumers need. Sure, have some black people that work there. Great. That's on the path to anti-blackness, but it isn't intrinsically anti-black if you're not taking the profits that you generate from that consumer base, which you know is economically disenfranchised, and then reinvesting it back in those communities so that you empower them to be self-sufficient and to become the ultimate consumer and well-engaged community person that you want them to become. So that's like anti-blackness versus like on a path to pro-blackness or centering blackness as an important concept.
Hmm.
And I take that very seriously as I, in addition to my normal job, take on recruitment, diversity, and inclusion strategy for the firm as it relates to bringing more black people into product and technology where we know globally we're underrepresented.
Yeah. So how do you do that? What does that process look like?
Yeah. So I partner with my what we call it colleague and experience group at American Express, moving away from HR because we not to get into the philosophy, but HR has some for the company kind of undertones. Calling it colleague and experience group centers the colleague versus centering the business. So that's why Amex is taking a different route there. What does it look like? For me, it means I look at the historical hire patterns of the departments that I represent. I identify across multiple different band levels what are our conversion rates, meaning how often do we give an offer, number one, and then how often does a person take that offer? What locations are you going to? And looking at that data analysis, I come up with a plan in partnership with both those line of business strategy heads as well as colleague and experience group to say how many people do we need to hire to move
Hmm.
the vision forward. So that's part one. Number two is what are the sources for those talents? So we look at the conferences across the country that have high value talent, folks who are straight out of college, like a variety of different
Yeah.
spectrums, because I'm looking at feeding multiple different levels in terms of the talent. And
Mm-hmm.
then I craft the messaging for what is the thing that makes Amex different than any other financial institution. A lot of these conferences are highly consumed by all financial product technology top players. So it's important for me to over index on the intangible cultural things that distinguish Amex. Finance, it's finance, it's finance. The philosophy is similar. There are a little bit of deviation as you go to companies. That's not my pitch. My pitch is about feeling like I show up as my full self in more ways than I've
Yeah.
ever showed up at any other finance company I worked for, and I worked for three of the biggest ones. I
Mm-hmm.
talk about like even HR being called colleague experience group and the centricity of the colleague versus the business. I talk about our investment patterns in communities that look like you. I talk about what
Mm-hmm.
it's like to be received and onboarded by an institution that sets up an entire week to walk you around an enterprise and make sure people knows who your face is and what that means. I talk about work-life balance and how we have a parental leave that's equal to 6 months for both father and mother that can be
Mm-hmm.
rotated, which makes us a work-life balance on the very liberal end of work-life
Yeah.
balance. So those are the intangibles that I lead with, and then I bring myself, full self times two, because what
Mm-hmm.
is interesting, I am one of the youngest senior leaders at the firm, and the intersection of my youth and race, not even the intersection of my race and sexuality, which we can get to later, that matters in
Mm-hmm.
some circumstances, but the intersection of my race and age, when I juxtapose it to other senior leaders, even at this firm or others, showing people that you can be yourself and also being the one that can most ostensibly relate to the population that I'm trying to recruit, because
Yeah.
others are different from a different lifetime. Um, I overrepresent that because I need someone to see themselves as me. I need the past to not be exceptionalized and me to look like the
Mm-hmm.
one person that got there, but I want it to be a believable and
Yeah.
achievable goal. And through representation, I can achieve that.
Mm-hmm. So being relatable too, you know?
Yes,
Yeah.
gotta be
Yeah.
relatable.
Good, good, good. So if I wanted to be an applicant, right? Like what's the talent you're looking for? What skill sets are
Yeah.
you looking for? What
Yeah.
qualities do I need to have?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I often tell people to think less about the job duties themselves and more about the intangible kind of the skill sets that you want to market. And then also
Mm-hmm.
be well researched in the cultural philosophy of the firm, which is easily researchable. You can Google Amex Blue Box values and it will bring up all of our cultural things. Make sure you interweave that language. So one, do your research.
Mm-hmm.
Two, personalize your message and really upsell your skill sets. There are a couple of things that matter to Amex. I always say frameworks scale more than individual solutions. And what do I mean by that? It's one thing to reach an outcome once. It's another to create a way that reaches that outcome repeatedly. Because what that represents is a way for a firm to see that you are interested in the enterprise doing well and not just your individual project doing well. I can sit anyone there, and if you've laid the framework, they'll get reach the same outcome as you. So show that you're framework driven versus solution oriented. Demonstrate that you prioritize collaboration. Amex is a decision by democracy. So there's a lot of conversation and a lot of debate. It doesn't move as fast as some other firms because it doesn't have to. It is the ubiquitous firm, which means that we don't have to make fast decisions. We're not catching up to anybody. We're trying to field off our, protect our existing territory. And that means that our process of decision making is quite different than other firms that are trying to catch up. We don't have to make fast decisions. We need to make smart decisions. And we need to make sure that the right people are at the table to opine on what needs to be considered for the decision to be reached in the right philosophy and framework. So prioritize collaboration. Think about co-creation, bringing people together at the beginning, not just coming to influence people to follow and adopt your
Mm-hmm.
philosophy. Um, Also, show reverence for historical versus contemporary innovation. Innovation, and let me explain what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Most times when people come in, especially when they learn the newest thing or they come from a different firm, the first thing they want to do is to show how much external perspective they have. Amex is a 156-year-old financial company that actually started out as a carrier that delivered packages. And then as the economy
Mm-hmm.
changed, started to do several other things, right? Like started to lend, then started to change the lending instrument into a financial credit card. It's had a long history. that's gone everything from horse and buggy to physical credit card. And so when
Yeah.
people understand that history, what they'll realize is there's like in 156 years, which many companies cannot survive, there are tons of attempts at innovation that have already happened. And there's some practices that are tried and true. And there are some moments where the tried and true isn't working and we got to try something different. You got to first understand a history that is that long and the practices that are deeply ingrained before you earn the right, I would say, to try to transform something. And so you have to show a balance between both wanting to learn the culture as well as motivate the culture to change. I learned that the hard way, so I'm actually speaking from real life experience. I came with a
Mhm.
wealth of knowledge coming from JP Morgan, its largest competitor. And I certainly took a little bit of time to learn. I would say I took my 90-day period. And once my assessment was done, I wanted to draft the recommendation and
Mhm.
influence. And what I realized is we needed to co-draft the recommendation together, and that
Mm.
adaptability, like the speed to which I got people to say yes to me was faster when they were there at the beginning versus in the middle. And the
Mm.
last thing I would just say is demonstrate yourself as a nice person. People underestimate the power of nicety. Amex is just a nice place. And like corporate America, it has its moments. But I would say that people genuinely want to do the right thing for the customer and for the firm. Amex is an emphatic place. It is a brand more than it's just a corporation. And that
Mhm.
brand has like an affinity group. People want to protect that brand. They love it. And because they really love what they're doing and they love the brand, people are like joyful. So like
Mhm.
not presenting as a joyful person is a good way to be X'd out. Like joy, and being able to manage conflict with a smile, being able to take a
Mhm.
break and pause before reacting immediately. Because there
Mm.
are some hard moments, but you got to remember positive intent. You got to remember you're in a place where people take everything very seriously about the protection of their brand, and you got to be able to walk away and then come back with the same nicety and joy that you had before things got hard. And I think we underestimate the power of that for getting into it. But those are my recommendations for making it through.
I love that. That's so good. I would have never thought of just like niceness. Come off with some joy. Like it almost seems like it would be something that's kind of self
Yeah.
explanatory, but it's one of those things that needs to be stated. So I'm so
It
glad
gotta
you
be
said that.
said.
And it's nice to hear that, like, oh, companies want that. You know what I
They
mean?
do.
Like they
They
want
do.
they don't want just the talent. They also want there's that humanistic part of it too,
You gotta be
like
humanistic. You gotta smile.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Good, good, good. So I didn't know Amex had all of those pivots. So that was great to learn.
Yeah. Baby.
But with that history, yeah, all of the pivots. And also, you had a lot of pivots too in there.
Yes, I
Like
did.
you are like pivot, pivot, pivot. Now I found my
Okay.
thing.
Yeah.
But that's not easy. A lot of people think like it's so easy to pivot,
Yeah.
but sometimes
Yeah.
people stay stuck for too
Yeah.
long.
Yeah. Yeah.
How did you realize, like, okay, this isn't working? Now, before we continue, I want to let you know that if you are looking for a more personal touch in your own life and you want to design your own remarkable life, we would love to work with you at Whole Self Wealth. Sometimes we just need a coach. Sometimes we need a partner to partner up with us to really make it to those next levels. I want to let you know that our team is here for you. I want to connect with you so we can design what's next for you. Now, back to the show. For me, I need to
Yeah.
make the switch. Like, how
Yeah.
did you do that?
Yeah. Yeah, so there's three major pivots I've made in my lifetime. The first one was from law school to business school and MSW. So that was pivot number one, career pivot for me. So that one was more about me feeling that law is inherently toxic. So my first moment where you think about pivot is this emotionally impacting me? We underestimate our mental health and how that allows us to show up as our best selves. For me, I was not showing up as my best student self. I did not feel aspired to work hard or inspired to work hard to become
Mhm.
the person that I ultimately wanted to become. I was drained every day. I was sad to go into
Mm.
class. It just felt like this was not the right fit. So my first
Yeah.
trigger for a pivot is emotional and mental wellness. That's what I
Mhm.
prioritize first. If I feel like that is not being sustained, there's not enough money or and any other kind of prowess that could convince me to stay
Mm.
in a toxic situation. Pivot one. My second pivot was the decision to determine MSW or MBA. Which one of those do I go toward? What is going to be my first thing I choose? That one was financial. Let's just get down to
Yeah.
brass
Yep.
tacks. Let's do that brass tacks.
Coming from an MSW, we get it. We understand. Okay. We know the pivot. We're not mad at the pivot.
If I didn't have both, I wouldn't know what to do. And see, let me just explain.
Yeah.
There are multiple types of MSWs for people who don't understand. The Master's in Social Work has two different kinds. I did the macro focus, which is more about social work policy. How do you lobby for the government to make the right policies and funding decisions to enable social work? What kind of research can you perform to allow social workers to make the right arguments about their clients and the type of care that they need? I was not a practitioner, so I did not exit an MSW with a lot of practitioner options. I would have had to go back and take continuing ed courses before I can even qualify to sit for an exam. Now, there's a major difference in the funding, the upward funding potential. Sure, you might get an initial something if you come out as a research person, but the real money in MSW is in the practitioner side. It is the folks that can bill private insurances and have their own care, right? I didn't have that, and so I was limited. I had to make a long-term versus short-term decision on what was best for me financially. And as a first person who went to college, who had to lay the framework for my brothers and sisters, who had to also take care of my family and pay back my own financial debt, I had to go with what was most financially sturdy for me, which was to go into product and consulting for me. So that was pivot number 2, the financial. The third pivot is, how do I continue to learn and accelerate my career? So that's pivot number 3. So I've gone from Capital One to JP Morgan and Amex. And what people don't know about my story is I've never actually had to really apply outside of Capital One. So my boss left from Capital One and went to JP Morgan. I got a phone call and came with her. My final boss at JP Morgan left and went to American Express. And when his non-compete was over, I got a call and came with him. So I tell people I'm out of practice for truly going through a true like throw your hat in the ring and get out there, because the quality of my work, the size of my brand, and the uniqueness of the intersection of my skill sets has made me a person whose network is so strong that it's carried me with them every place I've gone. But when I actually took people up on their offer, which when I realized, have I learned everything I learned here? Need to learn here.
Yeah.
Is there something that this next offer provides me that changes my remit in a way that accelerates my promotion timeline? And as I sit here as a 37 senior executive who is relatively young by a bit from my peers, I realize that those pivots are the only way those accelerations would have happened. Look, JP Morgan, I had one of the largest product roles there. I was a head of buy now, pay later product and technology development, which means all those Affirm and Klarna competition capabilities you see built, My Chase Plan, My Chase Loan, my teams built those from the strategy to the development. So I had one of the funnest, exciting, largest jobs. My decision to leave to go to American Express was more about American Express has global clients. JP Morgan isn't global in the same way. It's globally accepted, but it doesn't have a global, it doesn't service multiple markets in terms of where you can open an account or the types of products that it has. So I went from servicing a couple of international markets to 28 international markets. That is a massive change in the scope of my job. There is the size of the budgets I'm managing are quite different. And also the way that we see senior executive at the two firms is quite different as well. At Amex, you've seen I've been externalized quite a bit, right? I made my external reputation very known at JP Morgan by marketing and socializing the things that I was delivering. The firm is investing quite specifically in making sure that people know I exist, that my contributions are X, Y, and Z. And it's amplified how people receive me as a senior leader in the overall broader product and technology ecosystem. And so again, my three, in short, there are 3 things that drive pivots. It is mental wellness, financial stability, and an opportunity to accelerate yourself based on gaining new skills or widening your remit in a way that can accelerate your dreams and goals.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. And I'm glad you mentioned that financial piece, because I feel like sometimes we can get stuck in but I really care about this population. I really want to do this, not realizing you can still do that, but it doesn't have to be your bread and butter.
Hey,
we've been friends for a long time. So, oh my God, forever. We'll get into that story at another time. But
Yes.
Danielle, you're truly one of my best friends. You've seen me evolved quite a bit.
Mhm.
One of the things that I will say is we were both like these. We were so passionate about 100 things, and I think like if we don't like center it on the historical disenfranchisement of Black folks in this country,
Yeah.
um, we've made survival the primary thing that we consider.
Mm,
Thriving and surviving are not the same thing. And so
mm,
if surviving is what we center, then it makes sense that our passion projects like our passion projects become our job because surviving is the thing that is our priority. When we think about
right.
thriving, we realize that thriving has a circular kind of momentum to it. You thrive and it comes back, right?
Mhm.
You survive for the moment, but there is no return on survival,
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
Survival doesn't have a return and thriving does, right? And
Yeah.
so like as your thriving meter goes up, the ability to return and drive that back to your community goes up as well. There is a parallel relationship between the two, where sometimes
Mm,
surviving actually has an inverse relationship to what you can actually provide your community. You're mentally exhausted and survival is your
right.
centerpiece. And so you're not able to invest in yourself, your family, or others if surviving is the only thing that you prioritize. Sometimes surviving requires you to sacrifice your own economic freedom in order to unlock a moment of peace or protection that does not have a residual impact, right? It's like you
Yep.
survive today,
Mhm.
but you got to go and do that again tomorrow. It leads to a level of indebtedness that is both mental
Yeah.
and financial that sometimes
Mhm.
is so taxing that it stops us from thinking about our dreams as even possible because the only thing that we see is survival. But thriving does enable survival. Like they're not bifurcated. They're not like
Yep.
polar opposite. If we center thriving and then figure out ways to enable survivement, betterment, or whatever it is that we want to phrase, we'll realize that we get both. We knock out both
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
same stone.
Mhm. Mhm. No, that's good. That's good. And then also understanding your worth too. I feel like that's a big piece of
Oh,
it too, where
yep.
sometimes people may feel like, "Oh, well, this is all I
Mm-hmm.
know, so this is what I'm gonna go after." And it's
Yeah,
like, "No,
yeah, yeah,
we have to step
yeah.
past that, that
And
all I
you,
know mentality."
yeah. And we've
Mhm.
talked about that at nauseum too. And one of
Yeah.
my favorite non-job side jobs, one of my favorite things to do is to teach the art of negotiation to all my
Mhm.
friends. All my friends can call me no matter what vertical you're in, and you can talk to me about anything when it comes to negotiation. It is one of my skill sets that I do well.
Yeah.
One of the things I actually do is even negotiate on behalf of my incoming talent, so
Mhm.
that they don't have to negotiate for themselves. I will have the right direct conversation because I realize it's a skill set that's not endowed to
Yep.
everyone, and I want to set up
Mhm.
my entire team for success. So I would try to begin that negotiation before the negotiation ever been. That is what real transformative leadership looks like, right? I'm going to make
Mhm.
sure that you're coming into the door in the right way. Everybody does not do that. And I want people to hear that very clearly when I say every leader is
Yeah.
not designed like me and is not going to do that. So it is on you to know your worth, know what differentiates you from other people, right? If you've made it to
Mhm.
the offer stage, it means that something has differentiated you from other folks. You got
Mhm.
to figure out what the enterprise has thought that was, and you need to upsell
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
in those
Leverage that.
conversations.
Mhm.
Leverage it in the
Mhm.
right way, and then don't be afraid of the ask.
Yeah.
The only thing that's going to happen is a no. There's
Mhm.
it is not normal for a negotiation to the first conversation to result in a walk away. Like that's like
Mhm.
people expect negotiation, and in fact, they actually respect you more for negotiating. If you don't negotiate, that says something about your influence power before you even
Mm.
step in. Like I would not think that the things that I could task you in product, one of the hardest parts of the job is convincing people that you have the right idea about how to solve a problem. And people might have counter ideas, and it is a debate, which is why I love it so much. It's a debater. It's a debate. If you come in and accept the first thing I give you, and there is no conversation, like you have not like made a counter argument or counter position, then it tells me that I got to go help you develop some
Mm.
influence power. Because how can I trust
Mhm.
that you're going to take on some complex conversations and you're not
Yeah.
negotiating for yourself? This is where you have the most incentive to
Mhm.
negotiate, and it's where you're the most advanced because you know you better than I do, right? And all these
Yep. Yep.
and there's all these other instances you're supporting projects that may not even be yours. So if you can defend somebody else's idea, why can't you defend yourself? So like
Yeah.
sometimes we underestimate what not negotiation tells your leader about yourself and your skill set. So I encourage people to do it just for practice, to not be scared of the result, and to make sure that they understand themselves well enough to differentiate themselves in that conversation.
And I think that takes a level of confidence too,
Yeah.
and knowing yourself, because I feel like sometimes people get scared of corporations, right?
Yes.
And so it's
Yeah.
just like, oh, I may not get this. And it goes back into kind of like a scarcity mindset of like, oh, I may not get this if I negotiate. But actually, it's
Yeah.
the abundance mindset that's coming in and
Yes.
saying,
I
no, I
love
know my
it.
worth. This is what I want. This is what I
Yeah.
want to go after.
Yeah.
This is, you need to meet these numbers.
And there's one more piece that I said without saying, which is, we have been connected for years and have stayed connected despite the ways our lives have changed. And that tells me about the power of networking that we as Black folks oftentimes don't leverage enough. Like relationships have seasons, but if you maintain them in a healthy way, they can be unlocked to give you the information you need to leverage in a moment's notice. No one is the first Black person at a corporation in most instances anymore, right? Like there's somebody that likely has walked through that door before. Not always. Depends on the region. I'm gonna just go ahead and give a disclaimer. I'm gonna say I hope.
Facts.
At this point, I had to, yeah. But there has been someone that's there. So when I see the power of researching before having conversations, it's something I really just want to underscore. Sometimes we try to go with hope and a prayer. And while that is something that we all do and should continue to do, hope and a prayer needs some of your own conviction and your own energy. Do the research, plan and prepare. Have a conversation with somebody that works there and understand how they negotiated. Understand the ranges and how it's even possible. Like Google has made it too easy to access information that you should be studying before you have conversations. You shouldn't walk in without practice. You should leverage your network. You should do your research. Like it takes, I think when you said abundance mindset is a philosophical shift, but it's also one that's pragmatic. It's a pragmatism shift too. You can't reach abundance without no work.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And
Very true.
the offer ain't the end of the work, right? Like the work continues. The work continues. So like until you get that coin, understand that you got to continue working until that offer becomes what you want. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my goodness. I love the way you said that. That's so good, Aaron. That's so good. Yes. Okay. So I want to ask, because one thing that stood out to me that you said was showing up as your authentic self. Now, I've noticed in your story that your leaders are like, nope, come with me to this next company. Come with me to your next company, which one says a lot about your work, but also how you choose to show up and present yourself as well. Tell us a little bit about how you do that, because I feel like a lot of people feel like I have to mask certain things. I can't show up as my authentic self. I have to censor whiteness in order to get X, Y, and Z. So please, can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah. So I am an out leader who recently has become super out at work. But I'm an out Black leader, which means a couple of things. So first thing I would say is authenticity is a journey. So it doesn't stand still. As you learn more about yourself and what makes you feel safe, how much you allow to be seen will be like commensurate with both of those variables. So for me, a long time, centering whiteness wasn't an option for me. I have tattoos. Like my energy is super, I'm hyper energetic, just as a person. And that taps on the door of a couple of stereotypes, about Black maleness. So I could not center complete whiteness. It wasn't an option for me. So what I decided to do, and this is a controversial one, but I'm just going to be honest. Surviving corporate America required me to show up as my full self. I had to unleash the LGBT manneristic ways of showing up to neutralize the stereotypes of Black maleness that often get us seen as aggressive, overly passionate, patriarchal, and dismissive. And so if I show up as the hyper energetic, a little bit like, roll my language a little bit and over embrace the over identification with my LGBT-ness, I will over-index on
Mhm.
one and leave the other one behind. I will over-index on the other and leave the other one behind. And the bell hooks in me like came out, and I was like, intersectionality. I don't have to make a choice. I need to be
Right.
both. Once I made the
Mhm.
radical decision to be both, my career
Mhm.
changed tremendously. I
Yeah.
showed up, and the magnitude of what I showed up, it was commensurate with my how safe I felt. But I realized that I had an emphatic energy. The more free I was, the more free flow, the better ideas I came up with, the better I was able to
Mm.
influence, the more people wanted to look at me. When I realized that other black folks around me were all trying to become this cookie cutter version of what they thought navigated
Yeah.
corporate America, and I started to
Mhm.
leapfrog them like quite a
Mhm.
bit.
Mhm.
Double
Yeah, yeah.
leapfrog, okay?
I don't know.
when
We
I
we passed
when,
that leap.
when I
You
when I
flew. You flew.
when I started to fly fast in first class with hopscotch, whatever the game is, when I started to roll the dice and I started seeing everybody back there that was hyper masculine or like or
Yeah.
they like it was two extremes. Either they were like overly identifying with the idea that masculinity and aggressive energy was necessary to navigate corporate America, or they were going to the anti-blackness deference to like uh hyper grammatically correct,
Mm.
not showing up to any of the black functions. Those were kind of the two extremes, and I chose
Mm.
something in the middle. When I realized the middle was working for me, I
Mhm.
decided to take it to its fullest extent.
Yeah.
And I would say, my one piece I would say is it came with consequences. So along the way, some companies had a ceiling for my energy. My energy was not executive enough, right? So
Mhm.
my first willingness to leave one of my companies was because I felt like I thought that they would see that as jovial because my energy
Yeah.
reads as my pedigree is hyper intellectual. If you just listen to me for seconds, you would understand my capacity to go in and out of different language types. It's just
Mhm.
consistently me because I draw from multiple different sources of who I am. But in some places, the energy is just considered to be anti-corporate and juvenile. So while it got me up to the middle level, it would never get me to the C-suites or the senior vice president levels. Um, and other spaces have seen that when those benches age out not literally in the age that you are, but in the philosophy is not leading to innovation. It's not changing it's not inspiring people to see different. They're open and they crack the ceiling a little bit. Then some other
Mhm.
places are more accepting of that type of energy. So that's a long way of saying authenticity is a journey. You will learn what makes you feel safe and seen. But there is a differentiation and a power in being something different than everyone else, being something that is unique and comfortable for you because being fake is very obvious to detect. And if you realize that the you that you are has reached a ceiling where you're at, that is another
Yeah.
pivot, Aaron's pivot moment to find a
I love it.
corporation that
Mhm.
identifies with that and needs that very energy and then make it your differentiating moment.
I love that because I feel like that's so freeing just to hear out loud, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and so many people need to hear that,
Yeah.
but I think the key piece is feeling safe,
Yeah. You gotta feel
like
safe.
you
You
gotta feel
gotta
safe.
feel you gotta feel safe. As I said before, there's not enough money in the world. And
Yeah.
sometimes, and like, I don't underestimate the impact of finances, which is why I've also given out tips on how to negotiate for the right place.
Mhm.
But like sometimes we go too far with it. We make it too much of our priority and we underestimate the other things that also matter. Work-life balance matters.
Yeah.
Being able to have something that you don't have to be paid for or obligated to do that also makes you passionate and excited to get up in the morning matters. Work can't be your full life. You got to have a life outside of it. Feeling like you don't have to turn yourself on and off, that you navigate through spaces as a consistent person matters. It's exhausting wearing multiple costumes a day. Although I do like to
Mhm.
change an outfit a day, multiple times a day or two. But if
Yes.
you have, but those are physical clothes. Imagine your
Yeah.
spirit, something that doesn't hang in the
Mm.
closet, having to be taken
Right.
on and off, change from this
Mhm.
to that. That is a type of weight that we underestimate the impact of. This
Yeah.
is not changing clothes. We're talking about we're changing your fabric of who you are to fit a
Yeah.
community that may or may not care for you to the level of deepness that you might expect them to. And if those expectations when you realize they might be misaligned, the damage that does to you mentally is not worth the cost. And so I just try to over-index on people when I say have a full life, choose a place that sees you. The way that you get unlocked is going to be something that is so freeing and so inspiring. And you know this personally without going into deeper details. There is a freedom that people who follow my career that they can see has overcome me. And it's because I've chosen a place that I feel sees me a little bit differently.
Yeah, I love that. I love that too, because it's also letting people know you don't have to stay. You
You
don't
don't
have
gotta
to
stay.
stay.
You don't gotta
Right.
stay. And a little secret, Aaron's secret tip, you don't gotta stay. And sometimes leaving is one of the biggest financial decisions that you can get accidentally. Like sometimes we don't realize that, like I've worked at 3 of the largest financial firms in the world and
Yeah.
they are competitors of each other. So understand that as I have left, I've incrementally bought insights that each of them can leverage, right? Together. It has made me
Yeah.
more valuable than less valuable, right? And so oftentimes, like if someone doesn't give you this advice, you might think, oh, am I going to be like financially impacted by the politics of leaving? No, if you leave at the right moments for the right reasons, in good graces still with the place that you left from, your wealth is only going to go up. It's not going to go down, right?
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Speaking of having like a full life, right?
Yeah.
What does that look like for you having a full life? So we talked a lot about work, but
Yeah.
outside of work, what is
Yeah.
Aaron doing? What is Aaron into? Give us the goods.
So, I love music. One of the things that keeps
Yeah.
me busy is writing and recording music. It's not something that I share with the entire world, but it becomes a project for me that simply is a way for me to let off the steam. Like you collect a lot of steam during the week and I let it all go. And once I realized the power of keeping it for me, like not, so my first thing is I have a lot of things that I do on the side, but some of them are not for everybody. Some of them are for your shared tribe of folks. And you don't have to share it with everybody. In the age of social media, everything doesn't have to be for everybody. And keep some stuff for yourself. So it becomes your thing for you. So mine is music. I keep it to a special tribe, but it becomes a way for me to let off a lot of steam. I also do a lot of community activism related work. So I am a consultant to lots of different startup companies who are looking to like expand their financial strategy. And these are often Black co-founded organizations who have seen me on LinkedIn and from the various places where I speak and want my advice. Now I haven't even monetized this yet because for me, I am so passionate about giving out the information I can give to help others, right? I now am seeing it as another layer of my career in another moment in time once I'm retired from what I'm doing today. But for now, it's just something that I like to do. If you have something interesting and you need some quick advice, you can contact me for that. And then I have a partner. And I spend a lot of time with my family, which is a different version of myself than before. I love my partner to death. We've been together for 5 years. We spend as much time together as we can. We host family events. We travel all around. Aaron loves to travel. I go on 4 or 5 international trips a year, at least, the very minimum. I take all my vacation days, is what Aaron does, in his spare time. And then lastly, I really go to therapy and I also do lots of self-care routines. And I feel like we don't talk about that enough. It's like what you do outside, but it matters. And I feel like Black men in America definitely need to hear at the highest levels of our success. It doesn't take away what we grew up into and have survived or thrived around. We have to continue to process that in healthy ways. So I love my therapy. I love it, virtual and in person. And then I love my massages, nails done every other week.
Yes.
and, and anything else, that makes me, facials, like weekly haircuts. I love grooming. It's grooming for me is self-care. So it got to be a facial. I got to go shopping. I have to get my nails done. Those are the things that I like to do, but those things make me feel like a better person. So that's me. I started work.
But those things are important because they refuel you, right?
I am refueled, yeah.
And we need that because there's a lot of things that can hit us during the week where it's like we start draining energy, not realizing, okay, I need to put some energy back in, things that matter to me.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, Aaron, what's next for you?
So I just joined the Wharton Global C-Suite program. So I started last
Yeah.
week. Global C-Suite program is a global program that looks at senior executives who are near the C-Suite, anticipated to get there, and it helps them refresh all those MBA skills that you may or may not
Mm-hmm.
have used in its full entirety over the
Mm-hmm.
years. And it helps you strategize. How do you go from talking to stakeholders to board members? What does running a corporation look like when it's doing well and when it's going bad? I'm really super
Mm-hmm.
excited to join a global group of folks, where the majority of folks this year are from Africa and Asia, which is super exciting. And
Ooh.
so I got to meet them all last week. I'm super excited to be part of that class. So that's number one. Number two is Aaron's ascension to the C-suite. I think it's time. I have led a very long career in product and technology. My voice is quite distinct and unique. Um, and I've built a lot of enterprise strategies that are adopted at all the places that I've left. And now I think that
Mm-hmm.
I need to bring that legacy together,
Mm-hmm.
and drive a large corporation forward as the face of it completely. Um, and so like that is next for me. And then lastly,
Yeah.
starting my own consulting business to really help other people understand what it's like to get into product.
Yeah.
Because I've run the recruitment strategies for a lot of firms on the ground as my side of desk job, but I think I
Mm-hmm.
have a framework for what it means to recruit the right talent, identify it,
Mm.
and build it and help it grow. And
Yeah.
so I think that investing in telling that story, bringing it to life, um, is what's next for me. And then lastly, I think I really want to tell the story of what it's like to survive my partner and I are both in product and we're both at competing companies. Um,
Mm.
and
Mm.
I think that's such an interesting story. And I always look at you because I was like, one of this might involve you writing the story, Dani, as a well
Yeah.
accomplished author yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But no, but no, I feel like there's a story to tell there. I feel like there's a story to tell
Yeah.
about the things that we've conquered, our path to get there. What is it
Absolutely.
like bringing the competition home? Because we quite literally work
Mm-hmm.
for the two top financial firms in the world, and they're quite opposite, and they are competitors. And what does it look like? When do we have to bring up the Chinese wall? When do we? What is it like to be side eye in a commercial that come on from one side to the next? And we both love both companies equally, right? Like
Yeah. Yep.
I spent the
Mm-hmm.
longest part of my career where he is now. But I think
Mm-hmm.
it's just such a story to tell about being
Yeah.
competitors, being lovers and competitors at the same time. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's quite an interesting story to tell. So who knows?
No, that's good. We want to hear the story. We want to hear the story. So write the book, okay? Write the book.
Can you write? Can you both write for me? What's
Hey, I'll go read. No, good. I think one thing that you touched on too is relationship,
yeah,
and I think in today's society, a lot of people just have this loneliness,
yeah,
whether
yeah,
they're in a relationship or not in a
yeah,
relationship.
yeah,
What would you say, like,
yeah.
how did you find your partner? Like, and I know
Yes.
this is going different, but this podcast is, design your
I'm gonna tell
remarkable
the
life.
truth. I'm gonna
So
tell the
it's
truth
all the
about it.
things. Yeah.
So let me just
Mm-hmm.
say this. So, imposter syndrome hits me in a different way. My
Mm-hmm.
imposter syndrome is social. It's not intellectual. I'm
Mm-hmm.
quite self-confident intellectually. Like
Uh-huh.
I'm very clear on who I am and what my intellectual
Yeah.
contributions are. I've never been comfortable socially. And I've like tried to experiment with my introduction to certain crowds. And I've always taken my attempt very seriously where other people's might have been situational needs or um and things like that. And that lack of equity would just wreck me mentally. And what I
Yeah.
realized is it is okay to set a preference for being equally yoked. And equally yoked
Mm-hmm.
doesn't need to mean we all have the same financial landscape. What it might mean is that we see the world in similar ways. It might mean that our moral and ethical compasses are the same. It might mean that we have boundaries about how far we're going to go when things are right or when
Yeah.
things are wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It means that we would like, despite what happened, if you're in an emergency, that people would invest in you the same way you have invested in them. That reciprocity is a thing, not a figment of our imagination, which in some relationships, reciprocity comes to be. And so where I
Mm-hmm.
am and why I'm so at peace right now is I've stopped trying to fit into so many different places that remind me of home, places that make me
Yeah.
feel more comfortable as an LGBT person in the world, places that make me that remind me of my strength and power as a black man despite my LGBTness. There are so many contradictions in my life that I've tried to
Mm-hmm.
solve separately. I tried to have a
Mm-hmm.
crowd for this part of me, a crowd for that part of me, a crowd for this
Right.
part of me. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
I need to build crowds that understand the full me all the time. And I don't need to
Yes.
compartmentalize pieces of myself to parts of the community. It's exactly because I'm a complex individual, and I've tried to enter these crowds that only hit on one part of me that I was not designed to be a part of in the first place, right? Because
Yeah.
by virtue, by nature, they are not designed to understand who I am. It is
Mm-hmm.
unfair for me to expect folks who I know are not capable of that understanding. It's unfair to me emotionally for me to set that expectation, let it fail, and then deal with the repercussion of it. So ultimately, I'm just in a space where like my peace is tied to like an equity that I now know how to define. I didn't have
Yeah.
a definition for it. I thought equity
Yeah.
was only one thing this time and one thing that time. What it
Mm-hmm.
really is, I want some people to understand all of me, to understand it's multidimensional, it's situational, environments, all of those things. But at
Mm-hmm.
my best and at my worst, I am a person
Yeah.
that people will care about in the same way that I would extend that care back. And as long as I have
Mm-hmm.
that around me, I'm super excited. I don't got to be at every party no more. I don't have every social media
Yeah.
platform anymore. Like I have such a
Mm-hmm.
peace around me because
Yeah.
I'm not seeking validation in these sub communities. I'm building my own of full
Mm-hmm.
humans with full
Mm-hmm.
moral compasses just like mine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. No, that's beautiful. One thing I hear very often is as you move up the corporate ladder or just in your career, whether it's monetary or by title, it's harder to find people,
Yes, it
where
is.
you can get that equally
Yeah.
yoked. Are there certain places or
Yeah.
platforms people should be looking at? Because I'm trying to give
Yeah.
people, the tea. I've been
Let
married
me
for a
give
long time, so I'm
let
not
me give
there.
you
I don't know.
let me give you the tea. So I would say first join professional groups. So one of the things
Yeah.
that so one of my favorite things is now that I live in Jersey City, very close to New York. New York has tons of professional groups. There are Wall Street groups that drink together and go hang out together on a regular basis. All you got to do is Google professional groups in your city and go and join them. Whether it's bankers, consultants, finance
Mm-hmm.
as a global category, LGBT people in finance. I was just on a panel of LGBT people on Wall Street. Like there
Yeah.
are many sub communities and communities
Mm-hmm.
that are designed around professional verticals. And sometimes we want to separate work and social, but what this at least does at a bare minimum means that people understand the struggle that you've gone through for the week. You don't have to explain the moments where you are not drained and drained as a result of the journey that you took during the week. So it neutralizes that. And then two, it humanizes some of those people that you would often see as not the same as a social friend, right?
Yeah.
We bifurcated the work and the social, and they're not necessarily dichotomous. And what I've
Mm-hmm.
realized now is that as I move into like using these professional circles to find new friends, man, they can be as turned up and fun and energetic outside of work as you are. We all go
Yeah.
home and try to take off a mask when we're not being fully ourselves, and they're taking off masks too. So the best way for you to see what that mask look like is go to happy hour with them. So that's number one. Number two is I would say join spiritual groups.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we underestimate church not only for how it centers us spiritually, but there are so many positive
Yeah.
moments churches are like the center of the Black community, and there are so many different things that they do to bring you together around like-mindedness, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's like trying to like going on a spiritual journey, giving back to the community. There's so many different things that it does to
Yeah.
center you. So I would say church and professional communities are my top two things. And then my third
Yeah.
thing is date yourself. And that is even if you're in a relationship.
Mm.
I have made some of my best relationships flying out of the country or flying around the country by myself. If my partner can't go,
Yeah.
I would still go. I would sit at the
Mm-hmm.
bar. I would dress with the same energy and conviction as I would if I was in the boardroom. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Even though I might not have on a full suit, I'm going to give you a look that tells
Yeah.
you I am important and I've made it somewhere. Because that matters. Because sometimes we try to go so opposite of who we are that no one would pick up that you are who you are. You might be treated like how people perceive you are operating in your non-professional spaces. So sometimes in your non-professional spaces, you got to give some of that aura of your professional space.
Yeah.
Okay? You got to
Yeah.
give them
Yeah.
something.
Good.
Like I have on a leather pant today and a Fendi bag on the side. You know what I'm saying? But I'm on a polo shirt with a leather pin.
Yeah.
With a
Yeah.
leather pin because I wanted to give you a little bit of me, but I wanted you to
Yeah.
also understand that I was still a professional man. I threw the Fendi bag on there for a specific reason. Like there are
Yeah.
ways that we signify who we are and the quality of ourselves without having to overdo it. We can give small markers that illustrate who we are, and as a result of that, it makes people approach you with a different energy.
Woo, so
It
true.
it allows
Oh
people to
my
it allows
goodness.
people to deselect themselves because they know, and deselection is okay because sometimes that
Mm-hmm.
natural deselection stops people from dealing with some of the nonsense. For real. So we have to stop dichotomizing the professional and social
Mm-hmm.
as two separate realms and realize you have to always show up as you are. You have to show up as you are across the two,
Yeah.
or they're going to start to bleed together in ways that are so negative and toxic to you that you won't get the appreciation you need in both realms, that you're looking for. So those are my pieces of
Yeah,
advice.
yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned that too. Like how you present yourself matters, and it may be
Mm,
someone that's not into certain labels or things like that. You may
Yeah,
be into
yeah,
something else. How you still
correct,
present yourself, it still
correct,
matters. Yeah,
exactly.
and it's so funny. Me and my sister did this test where we're like, if we dress a certain way, we're treated differently than if we
And
dress
it's not,
other ways.
and it's so shade, and it's so shade, and again, like to your point, like I am not a I'm not always into a label, but what I'm always
Hmm.
into is looking nice. And like for me,
Yeah.
that matters. No matter what it
Hmm.
is that you have on, if you take care of them, if you make sure that you're hygienically presentable, that you're always, you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying, well done and not looking unkempt, that we underestimate the
matters.
power of what that does to you,
Yes.
especially when people are around you. And with me at this particular big age, given how I am externalized at this firm, so it was a little easier to hide when I was at some of the other firms. Even though I was an executive too, I wasn't on websites and on
Hmm.
a bunch of speaker panels and traveling the world to talk about the firm. Now I am. And so I am
Yeah.
so much everywhere, advertised, associated to the firm, that you don't know who has already seen you before they approach you. You have no
Hmm.
idea, right?
Right.
So if I'm so against my brand when I show up, that can
Right.
be weaponized
Right.
against one, it can be weaponized against me. Two, it could
100%.
devalue the work that I've already done and put that
Hmm.
brand at danger. You don't want either of those things to happen. And so you have a little bit of, you're almost obligated to yourself to at all times be on the lookout for how you maintain the brand that you worked so hard to create for yourself.
Yeah, no, that's good. You've also let me know I'm not dating myself well enough.
You gotta date
You
yourself.
said I date myself and I love that.
I'll
But
date
once you
myself.
said traveling around the world, I was like, wait a second, going to a
Well,
fancy restaurant, obviously.
Well, not just that part. Because my partner and I, my partner, I tell the story a lot, but my partner was
Yeah.
a principal when I met him, and
Hmm.
he was an educator. He's in the math and sciences. I love that he was in something different. Education got real dangerous, and there's a lot of other reasons he left. But like, there was a
Yep.
moment during the riots and like all the things that were happening a few years ago that were so dangerous to be in a school. I was having anxiety attacks when he had to come home late, like literally in
Yeah.
real life, scared for my partner. But he also had this, like, at the same time, he had this enthusiasm for what I was doing. So ultimately, he transitioned to product. But because of that transition, he's earlier in his career, despite he got credit for all the years of experience he had, to principal, he's quite on a different level of his journey. So what does that mean
Hmm.
sometimes? It means I'll take him as many times as he can, but we don't got the same PTO days, right? So sometimes when I need to
Hmm. Hmm.
go, my partner has given me the luxury to let me go. And I now
Yeah.
have the confidence because I know I've dated myself so much that I can go on a trip, no matter if it's down the street to Miami, whatever it is. I can go on a trip and I can sit at the bar and I can introduce myself. How are you doing? How's your day today? What kind of martini is that? Let
Mm-hmm.
me get you one because it looks like you're having a bad day or it looks like you're having a good day. I incite conversation everywhere I go because I learn
Mm-hmm.
stories about people, and I make connections.
Mm-hmm.
If I sense we're connected based on all those other things that I've already mentioned,
Yeah.
or I think you need someone to smile and be nice to you today. You know I love that. Like that is my
Yeah.
favorite thing
Oh
is to
yeah.
making someone's day. I love
Mm-hmm.
passing a drink and starting a conversation. And when you realize that you brought in the people that love you, that start to get to know you and want to love you in a different way, you'd be surprised the random connections that you can make. So date
That's
yourself
beautiful.
and be
I know.
nice to
I
people
love
while you're
that.
doing
I love
it.
that. I love that. Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. And would you say that you're more extroverted or introverted?
So I would say I'm socially I think I think I'm both.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
so I'm definitely both. So I actually feel in crowded spaces I feel a little bit alone, and it would surprise a
Yeah.
lot of people. For me, I'm like in large spaces I'm socially introverted. Like I would have to feel safe enough to allow for my extroverted energy to expose itself. But once
Mm-hmm.
I feel safe in a space, the extroverted energy is my default. It's what I want to be.
Yeah.
But my anxiety in large spaces, knowing how multidimensional I am and knowing that I may not be for everyone, which is a hard pill to swallow. When you
Mm-hmm.
love yourself so much and you believe you have so much genuineness about you, and you have to
Mm-hmm.
come to the grips that that genuineness does not translate for everyone,
Right.
that's a tough adulthood thing to swallow. But once you are aware of that, you protect yourself in a little bit different way. So my protection mechanism in new spaces where I haven't learned if I'm safe or not is to be introverted. I sit back, I observe, I try to
Yeah.
understand what's happening, and when I realize,
Mm-hmm.
oh, they my people. Hey, everybody, what's good? That's how I
Right. Good,
am.
good, good. Okay. So you have built this amazing, remarkable life. I'm so glad you spoke on the pivots, you spoke on the climb, you spoke on surviving versus thriving, and so much
Mhm.
more. One thing I want to ask you is if you had to go back, let's
Mm.
say 20 years or so, what would you tell that Aaron?
Um,
Knowing everything you know now, knowing where
oh,
you are now, what
that's
would
an
you tell
emotional
that
question. I
Aaron?
almost had an emotional moment. I was
Oh,
someone
sorry.
that you're enough, that you're
Yeah.
going to become something special.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would have gotten here faster, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
Like the part of the reason I had so many pivots is because I as talented as I knew I was, and in the pockets where that was affirmed, like I felt very powerful. But there's so many ways that I think my just where I grew up and the type of like systems I had to navigate tried to beat me down in different ways, whether it was my
Yep.
LGBTness or my blackness or the both of those things or my age relative to my peers. Like there are so many different ways where people wanted to disqualify me or convince me I wasn't enough for something. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't think I had the mental and emotional strength at the time to not let those things impact me. And so there would be these moments of self doubt that now I look back on them and I'm like, and I'm looking at some of the people who issued them, and not to be shady, but there's quite a difference in where we are today. And
Mm-hmm.
like I'm like, why would I ever let someone like that even feel like they had the capacity to
Mm-hmm.
hurt me? So the one piece of advice I would give myself is one piece of advice I would give myself, and through my story, anybody else is uh, man, there are moments and there are patterns and there are journeys, right? Moments are hard. Don't let those moments
Yeah.
become your
Yeah.
pattern and don't let it affect your journey, right?
Ooh.
Like, let a
Mm-hmm.
moment be a moment. Breathe, have a bad day, cry.
Yep.
But don't wake up the next day and carry that moment forward because it easily becomes a pattern, and pattern behavior impact the journeys that are possible for you, right?
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I just wish I knew that sooner because again, like I said, I still was able to get to where I was in relatively good time. But
Yeah.
man, I just realized if I was unleashed and I had this emotional wellness earlier, I don't know what I would
Mm-hmm.
have been today. You know, I think it would have
Yeah.
been fast, five
Yeah.
times faster. That's what I would have done earlier.
Yeah, I think that's so powerful too, just that emotional wellness because it's not something that you can necessarily like quantify.
Correct.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it makes a huge impact and a huge difference.
It
Aaron, you
does.
are amazing. I can talk to you for hours and hours and hours, but I want to be respectful of your time. Thank you so much for
You're
joining the
welcome.
show. If people wanted to find you or reach out to you,
Yeah.
how should they do that?
Yes. So LinkedIn is my primary platform. I told you I don't do all that social media no more. So just type in Aaron Davis Amex. Uh, I would come directly up. It will tell you that I'm a vice president at American Express. You'll see my executive leader quotation up there and my picture. So that's the best way to get in contact with me.
Yes. Thank you so much, Aaron.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And one more thing before you go. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, leave it 5 stars, and share it with a friend. That incredibly helps our channel out. And we don't want you to miss any amazing nuggets that could change your life in any way or someone you know. So please share this with a friend and remember, you have the power to design your remarkable life.